Welcome back, YouTubers, to my channel of an everyday life of an ASB. If you're new to my channel, I welcome you with open arms. I'm ASB, and I'm all about creating mental health and awareness, especially sharing my life stories with Aspergers Syndrome, OCD, and the like, as well as giving you guys some tips and advice along the way with certain mental health conditions or just any, conditions whatsoever that I can come up along the way based on my training and experiences, and hopefully some of that will be with, with good value to you. Just bear in mind though, however, whatever I share may not be best fitted for everyone. I know that for a fact. You take it or leave it with some of the stuff I share, sort of thing. And also, when I do give the tips and advice, also regardless whatever it may be of the mental health areas or just other things, that you need to be in mind that you need to know the signs and symptoms. So if you see anything that fits in those symptoms, regardless what it may be, seek professional help for you or your loved one, or you seeking professional help, advice along the way. So, no further ado, guys, basically, I also do, before I run out of time, is I do some messages of hope, basically, from my Beauty from Ashes playlist, regardless what it is, but at this point in time, I'm leaving it as off so that we can focus on what I had promised to you all, which is now coming into effect after doing a bit of research, and that I'm hoping it's not going to be too much of a waffle. I humbly apologize. But this is all about basically the Altogether conference or meeting that I told you about, that I went to last week on Wednesday, 30th of November, I think, if that's the right date, which obviously is titled as Doorway to a World of Support Networks. So what the first part of my video was in covering this was all the services that Altogether Autism do provide, as well as just, the structure of who they are, what they are, the services they provide versus basically some other services that comes into play with autism, like parent to parent, as I mentioned, even though I just touched briefly. Also, like the life unlimited, obviously. Also, basically, the Ministry of Health of these two other organisations that I could think of, which was running under the umbrella of TPO, which obviously, had two grants there that I briefly shared, as well as briefly also shared with you guys about PRISM, obviously. And it's not prison, it's PRISM, just to clarify, obviously, and I told you guys briefly what it's all about. And then the third part, hopefully, obviously, after this part that I'm going to bring out to you today, is going to be sharing basically a bit more about PRISM and some other bits that was missed out in the first bits and pieces of the meeting, even though it was a bit rushed in some parts. I felt trying to get every information packed down to what I felt to, record at that time. So I hopefully, within rights, I've been told it's okay to use bits and pieces of the information that I can think of that is of relevance, and just create that awareness and understanding for you all that wants some information to what I'm sharing with you all. So hopefully maybe you guys maybe be able to feel the need or have to reach out and seek the help you need. So obviously this is part two. Obviously this one was obviously having a guest speaker, or it was just a speaker as such, by the name of Paula Jessop. She was talking about her life with Aspergers Syndrome, or as we're trying to remove the word syndrome and all these other formality of words in the health dictionary and whatnot. She says she was like, I'll give like a little brief background about her, and then hopefully, like I said, be able to share what I can gather up of my thoughts of what was shared. She says she's an accidental autism presenter, which she means there is obviously she's all about, presenting herself in a way of being a person on that spectrum of Aspergers syndrome, and actually at that point she's obviously has done a few presentations here and there about Aspergers syndrome and the like, but then she mentioned also that she's a voluntary worker here in New Zealand in a local branch of Altogether Autism in Tauranga. Basically, she's one of the groups that I mentioned in part one, but I'll recommend you guys to watch what I'm referring to there. Basically, she's under the consumer reference group. Basically, of what she does there is obviously, as she said, that they gather and research some information in regards to tailor-made information packs for whatever inquiry we do. She's a proactive advocate and autism mythbuster. However, she's obviously, she says it's her first time speaking about her personal experiences with Aspergers Syndrome. Obviously, she's mentioned something about the word lived experience, which is living inside the condition or learning differently from the autistics. You know, she mentioned about every autistic is different. Obviously, as I've mentioned so many times before, to you guys, that, you know, we get that misconception of people thinking that all autistics are the same. They'll stay the same throughout their developmental age and stage of life, but that's not 100% true. Basically, she also mentioned basically that sometimes with some of the communication methods that we use is different from everybody, like the NTs especially. Some of the forms that we use is not easy for some of us autistics to understand. You know, she said something along the lines also, clinical professionals that are starting to now come to an understanding now, knowing what autistic meltdowns are and the differences of the change of behaviours that goes into retrospect of us autistics. You know, obviously, as we know that they also, for the clinical specialists, are now knowing about, you know, with autistics, their behaviours are different, you know, and they know the behaviours of an autistic trait and whatnot, obviously. So she said when we were there on the day that the presentation she was sharing with us is more aimed for the parents with, you know, children with autistic, not the ones that are actually autistic. She didn't want to, you know, exclude us to a point though, but I can relate to some of the points she was giving us. She mentioned something along the line. She illustrates, you know, different types of chocolates that will represent different conditions in that box of chocolates in just the one box. The autism spectrum are obviously different people, different needs. Some of these personal experiences I shared earlier are similar to what I've encountered. Pardon me. And some of the other people that are autistic can probably, in some degree, maybe be able to relate as well as the ones that are in training may be able to relate, or even just any parents that were in the room, obviously, because like I said in the very beginning of my video, that during that meeting, obviously there was a diverse range of us. Some of us on the spectrum, some of them were parents with, you know, kids with autism. Some were obviously professionals, or not just professionals as such, but they're just training up in their social work, basically, of learning to understand different people's special needs and whatnot. The questions she threw at us are all autistic, you know, adults and children are the same, you know, and no, they're not. You know, the perceptions and myths about where children will stay at the same place and stage in their lives, and that we wouldn't change, that we're all the same. You never relate. We're not the same at all, like I said. But we grow up like anyone else do, you know, regardless of some of the stuff that we may have had in our childhood may dissolve and disintegrate and create it more into our, you know, strength than anything else. Another one of number 2, she said, of an assumption or myth is that if a child has a meltdown, will the adult also have a meltdown? This is not always the case, not necessarily, but then again, you know, every autistic is different. Obviously, some adults, you know, in their autistic lives may end up eventually have a meltdown, even if they didn't have one while they were a child. You know, every autistic child is different. Okay, obviously she mentioned also here, the level of which the autism changes is a temporally individuality thing. So there'll be someone whose autism will be at a point or stage where their developmental will not go any further, but for the vast majority of us, it will tend to shift and change, and the autism may decrease on how we deal with it may increase. So it's all about, like I mentioned, the word shape-shifting. So I recommend you guys to watch my video based on shape-shifting to give you guys a better understanding to what I'm saying there. So, you know, NT, she mentioned, obviously, she calls them normal people, you know, but with me, I'm a different kind of first entities. I call them as normal people with no autism whatsoever, or who's not autistic. Um, Highly impossible with anxiety to deal with. Obviously, they think that with people with autism, it's about also finding our strengths in autism and use it the right form of way, context, and finding those right techniques that will work for us towards our strengths. Also, that sometimes we need to realize that regardless of our weaknesses, like anybody, being on the autism spectrum or just the NTs in general, that we need to just work along with each other's weaknesses and strengths and hopefully put it into action. There are a lot of counselling and therapy available. Obviously, she mentioned to use. We need to be aware of not to actually use it to an extent to let them lead to believe that they can completely change us and completely cure us from the autism, because obviously, as I said before, with some mental health disorders, or many, it's all about basically managing and treating it to the degree of not formulating, of changing us to who and what we are, to people's expectations of how we should be acting, how we should be thinking, and that, because like I said in one of my videos, again I'll recommend, is to follow your dreams. It's okay to be different, it's okay to stand out, to be different, it's okay to make a stand for a change, it's okay to actually just be brave enough just to speak your mind. At the end of the day, why should we just be the white sheep amongst the white, if you know what I mean? It's in the retrospect of what I'm saying is, we should be different by being the black sheep amongst the white sheep, and actually be proud of who and what we are, and stand up for what we believe in, and actually choose to say and do what we want to do. Enough rambling on that part, but she'll mention about the treatment and therapies that is available for us autistics, regardless of it all, as well as the counselling that is available, not just for us autistics, but many people who may go through their, differences in their life, of their mental health or whatever it may be, that she mentioned something along the lines, despite of not letting it completely change us, to try to make us as normal as possible in that spectrum for them, of the expectations, as long as what we want in the long term is sort of thing as well, of the autistics, and with the things that will be helpful and beneficial to us, because obviously we know what's right and best for us, obviously, and no one else can tell us what to do and say it to us, because obviously we need to find out for ourselves what's right for us. Because I'm not saying it in a real what's the word, sarcasm or nasty vindictive way of what I'm trying to address to you guys today, but what I'm saying is, like, in some ways many people fall in the trap that we should be pleasing everyone. I was that once upon a time, trying to please everyone, sitting there silently taking up the abuse from people, regardless what it was, verbally, emotionally, and everything else. Now I'm trying to make a stand to what I believe in, and actually say to myself, enough is enough, and actually think, no, this is what I want to do, and do what is there. Sometimes now also she mentions, touch briefly on jobs and workplace, about how for us autistics we can self-advocate ourselves in a better way to actually create an understanding and awareness in that workplace of how we should be treated, to a degree, but then again, also to that retrospect, that it goes out of proportion of some people, because obviously how I look at it, of the workforce, that there has been, discrimination about certain different people with different needs, be it autism and other people's different needs, regardless what it may be. And I feel that, something needs to be, done there, and actually maybe some of the infrastructure of the mind of certain people's perspective needs to change, regardless what it may be. Also, she's talked about positive self-identity as an autistic is important, like anything else, because many of autistics, once we get that so-called label or diagnosis, some of us just feel, now what next, and yeah. Autism obviously isn't going to go away, it will stay with us forever, as I said before. It's not like it's going to be disappearing like magic with the snap of your fingers, away you go, abracadabra. She mentioned as a quote, if you hate your autism, then you'll hate yourself. In other words, we should revert that back to another way to change our way of thinking, our mindset, and how we think and act towards ourselves. Is maybe we should be loving ourselves as well as the autism that brings out the best of us. Because obviously, as we know, nobody shouldn't have to feel bad about themselves. We shouldn't be bringing ourselves down to the point that we've got this label. Regardless, maybe we should try and look at the plus and positive side of being an autistic, and bring it out to us. She said something along the lines for the parents with autistic children to accept and love the child, even though yes, we may bring some difficulties and challenges along the way. But then again, it's just the way life is, and how we deal with it the best way we can, obviously, by it all is important and crucial. TEDx talks about difficulty saying things like, I don't waste any energy thinking about what I can't do. I put my energy what I can do. What it means here is, why shall we dwell on the things that we can't do when we know that there are a lot of time we should be able to focus on things that we can do, because obviously time is our enemy, and that within that time frame, it is against us, and we need to know that we should be able to do what we can do in our life, as we are given only one chance, but obviously to do all these things that is in our life, so that we should be able to enjoy our life regardless, and using our strengths and what we can do, finding a place of self-acceptance, and self-help is a good way, as we now got the power of social media and more, obviously, to do this regardless, as well as just, the medical professionals in the medical professional field of, whatever they are trained to be, and seeing them in person. Another thing is basically, is despite our challenges as being an autistic, of these difficulties and challenges, we can always find alternative ways and tackle them, regardless what it may be, in our lives. As I said before, it's all about accepting who and what we are as a person, regardless of what it is, and being able to know what works for us. Not everything will guarantee to work all at once for us, so we should be able to just maybe problem solve and take it one step at a time, even though some of us autistics, like me included, can be stubborn and prideful, just wanting to just trying to find a quick way of just dealing with it straight away there and then. It'll be acceptable basically if the neurotypicals accept us for who and what we are, and understand us. Again, nobody want to feel like they're not being accepted by others or what have you. So basically, she also talked about social explanation versus social expectancy. From this, we tend to have a theory based on what it is, social expectations refers to the general standards of behaviour that individuals who live within a society are expected to uphold. Good manners and common sense are standard examples of universal social expectations, although specific social behaviours basically are obviously of good use, though may differ from one culture to the next. So there is sufficient evidence, though, however, to suggest that individuals do not behave at random, but rather according to the norms attributed to their social group. Deviation from the behaviour exhibited by the vast majority of a social group is considered a violation of social expectations. Although different cultures have unique sets of normal behaviours that members are expected to uphold, basically expected to follow, obviously, for that kind of norm of those, behaviours. Some of these behaviours include a respect of personal property and space, abstention from violent behaviour, except in cases of self-defence, and a general willingness to lend reasonable assistance to others, basically within the social group. Obviously, these social expectations are thought by many evolutionary psychologists to exist because they serve as basic rules that allow the social group to function in harmony. Social creatures stand a greater chance at survival, basically, because of the strength in numbers and social expectations to keep all numbers in the group in line, obviously. And also, I'm saying that, though, we need to be able to know that there comes the cost of all this, regardless. Lives, we know that all humans accept into life. There's something in life we don't have to live with these rules. There's sometimes we shouldn't be able to be ourselves, to stand up, be different, to stand up anything that we're against, basically, to what I'm sharing with you before about, you know, following your dreams and whatever else it may be. Also, social explanation. We might be able to know the right way to socialize if we understand why and the reasons to why. Example, why we shouldn't be acting a certain way or talking a certain form of manner, regardless what it may be. When getting diagnosed and sort of thing, many of us will most likely have a negative, you know, prognosis basically programmed into us in the unique style of, you know, for example, that the child may be broken, the child may not be able to live a abundant, independent life on their own. A child, you know, will always have difficulties. For a lot of us, for a lot of the parents that was in that group or would have agreed to that, that this will be frightening and overwhelming for them to be, you know, hit with all these prognoses that can go wrong with a child, and still at the very at the very beginning of the lifestyle of the child. And all of this is about, you know, the psychology discipline, which is about focusing on these challenges. And this is the same for adults being diagnosed. So therefore, we should be obviously being able to, regardless of these prognoses, be able to break free from those things. And even though it has a negative impact on us, if we do tend to dwell on us, regardless what it may be. Okay, we might think that everything about autism is wrong. We find it hard to find something good about the autism. So then again, the negative effect on trying to fix ourselves, obviously just to please others, will come into play. So just despite these prognoses, we're broken and everything else, and we decide, oh, okay, I'm broken and I can't fix myself, or whatever it may be. But we should be able to just be, like I said, be ourselves. There has been growing interventions and therapies. Obviously, there has been obviously too much stress for children around, you know, with this. Obviously, she talked about the medical model, a model that looks at the behaviours of different conditions that solely focus on what's wrong and not what's right. This model can clearly show what's wrong with others that are of the being abnormal. Obviously, with the medical model, she mentioned how there's been some negative language, which of the language that has been used, obviously, or has been used in autistics as well as other people with different conditions. Autistics read language literally. Obviously, entities have a different way of interpreting language. However, they may not mean what they say sometimes or what have you, but sometimes some autistics will mean what they say straight out, right? Obviously, Aspergers Syndrome, a difference in the word. Asp, obviously, as I said before, is a self-claimed word. Advocates changing the language and words of disorder and all the like. No one likes negatives, like 7, you know, criticisms to 1 compliment. Obviously, with us autistics, we don't get many compliments. Majority of the time, it'll be a lot more, you know, criticisms than compliments from them. Variations of autism, generalization of autism model doesn't focus on our strengths, however, it only focuses on our, you know, behaviors, on how we act and whatnot. Autistic people need to find strengths. Going deeper into the traits, behaviors, and strengths obviously is important. Getting to know the individual autism. Obviously, autism is varied. Obviously, functioning autism obviously was talked about, of the high and low functioning, how it should just be demolished. Get to know the individual autism. Obviously, life works, social life, whatever. We do feel love, even though many people may think we don't. Many people think we're not empathetic enough. And she mentioned something about hyper empathy, that can lack empathy. Never use the same language as in T's. Obviously, we don't. Practical solutions for others. We shouldn't be buying into stereotypes and myths of autism. However, also the pseudosciences that has been brought about, the simple cures for autism, was brought briefly into this as well, which basically they reckon that gluten diets, especially for celiacs, you know, good to remove because the behaviour will shift. But then again, you got to realise there's some autistics that are mutes and that will shift again the behaviour and that into them of that celiac diet or gluten diet that it was being controlled in a way that should be controlled so that they didn't lash out on whatever else. Obviously, the quackery quote of, you know, curing autism, you know, something will cure autism, be it vitamin B12, be it, all these other wishy-washy, quackery quotes. Obviously, nothing cures autism like any other mental health disorders, as I shared briefly. Sometimes it's important to connect with autistics like any other person, obviously, to connect with, social skills training for ENTs and autistics may be basically important, you know. Autistic people can be difficult to understand for ENTs and vice versa. ENTs can be difficult to understand for us autistics because of the differences on how we speak and act and treat each other. We need to, obviously, to end this, accept each other's differences and accepting the line of certain boundaries, small talk maybe, do some research, understanding each other, respecting different people's needs and whatever else it may be. So this quickly ends the second part of the Altogether Autism Conference part of it, of the Living Life with Aspergers Syndrome, part 2 with the guest speaker, Paula Jessop. Give me a like for thumbs up for support, comment below if I've missed out anything, or feel free to start up a discussion based on some topics that I am willing to see your guys' thoughts, be it shape-shifting, the pseudoscience, or basically of certain things that's of all these small claims of, this cures autism, that cures autism. Also, maybe another one, maybe you could bring up some more based on the medical model. If you know more about that, bring that into it. Another challenge is social explanation, not social expectation, what your thoughts about it is. Correlation isn't causation. Quota as well, maybe to put into the table right now as well for discussion. So feel free to do all those. Feel free to follow me on my social media sites, SB Ansel, Twitter or Facebook. Feel free to private message me on those social media sites if need be. If you need someone to talk to, feel free to subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so. Feel free to just, share these videos around. Do what you love what you do. Until next time, thanks for the support. Thanks for watching. SB signing.